Hello, everyone. Welcome to the video here. I'm Rob, and joining me tonight is Joe. Anthony is on vacation, and as such, we won't be having trivia, unfortunately. Sure, that's what most people were looking forward to, but instead, Joe and I are going to talk about the recent arrest of Cardinal Zen, um, what it means for the church in China, and the example it can set for us here in the West. So, how's it going, Joe?
Doing quite well, Rob. How about yourself?
Pretty good. It's Friday, so can't complain.
Yes. Tomorrow's a work day for me, but that's all right.
Oh, yeah.
It's my side job, so I can't complain too much. I do this voluntarily, so
Yeah. A little bit more relaxed, right?
yeah, it's not so bad.
Okay. Well, we're trying a couple new things tonight, including some new graphics and overlays and stuff like that, as well as not only are we streaming live on YouTube, but we're also streaming live on Rumble for the first time tonight too. Hopefully.
Ooh,
Anyways, I haven't checked to see if it actually is working.
we're just assuming.
Yeah, I'm just assuming, hoping, really.
I like the graph. Everything looks pretty good. You're doing a heck of a job, Rob.
Trying to. I had someone design this for me. I didn't get to see it until this morning. So,
Oh, really?
looks all right.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Well, White Wolf, you're probably right. We try not to make it too much of a clown show, but can't guarantee it.
Yeah. It's I mean, if it was a trivia show, it would be more of a clown show than this. But
Yes. Yep. Well, I mean, anytime Anthony's involved.
yeah. He's a clown of clowns on this show. So,
Yep.
but tonight will be a bit serious. Far from grave, we'll try to take on a serious subject with a joyful spin and twist to it. But it is rather a grave subject and a serious subject, that of Cardinal Zen.
Yeah, that's for sure. What day was he arrested? Was it Tuesday, Wednesday?
So I was just listening to as I was trying to get some background information for the show here. I was just listening to EWTN and my friend Tim Gordon's show. So he went live yesterday. Technically, I think because it's the Eastern Hemisphere is like yesterday it was yesterday according to China. So I guess it's 2 days ago at this point.
Okay.
So yeah, he's but as far as I could tell now, he's out on bail, but we don't know how much longer that's going to last.
Right. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the whole legal system in Hong Kong, let alone the mainland China. But I think what did they charge him with? Wasn't it like financially supporting a pro Hong Kong group? Or?
Right. Yeah. It seemed to be just some old charge that they could dummy up just to arrest him for being outspoken against the regime over there. But yeah, it did seem to be a some kind of nonsense financial charge that was completely meaningless and pretty transparent on the part of the government. I mean, everybody knows why he went to jail.
Right, for being actually Catholic.
Yeah, friends and enemies alike know that he's been the guy's been he's been the thorn of the side of the Chinese church, as it were, and
Right.
the Chinese government since the early since the late 80s. So I was just showing you off camera there that I picked up this book for a bit of a background on the history of the church in China. It's Ignatius Press publishes it. It's called "For Love of My People, I Will Not Remain Silent." It is a series of, I believe it's lectures that Cardinal Zen gave, which I'm only part of the way through it, and it does give a good illustration of what had been going on leading up to this point, dating back all the way from, like I said, 1988 till now. So Cardinal Ratzinger's involvement, John Paul II's involvement. Yeah, it's a good. I mean, if you're interested in the situation, which I think any Catholic might be, because
Or should be.
Should be, yeah, because I think what we see with Cardinal Zen is the very early. Well, I don't want to say early stages because he's been at it a while, but it's starting to become obvious that this is in my opinion, one of the great heroes of the church in the last century or two.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also possibly a sign of things to come throughout the rest of the world too.
Yeah, it's definitely ominous. Just like everything else seems to be these days. We were just talking about how high gas prices are, and that those only seem to be getting worse and worse. The COVID regime doesn't seem to be going away. I hope I didn't just get this video pulled off, but
YouTube maybe. I don't know about Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble we might still be standing if it's streaming over there.
If it's even working.
And the fact that, I mean, Cardinal Zen is a bishop in good standing in the church. He's not some oddball independent rogue bishop. He's the highest ranking prelate in the country of China. So not necessarily to be critical, but there's been obviously some media coverage of it. EWTN, everybody else, the trad media sphere has all been talking about it. Bishop Athanasius Schneider addressed it, which is good. But,
another victim of communist regimes in the past.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the more bourgeois, segment of the church, the Western Europe and things of this sort, who haven't quite stomached anything like hard tyranny, like a Bishop Schneider or a Cardinal Zen would have went through, seem to not be saying a whole lot. Yep. So, obviously we pray that the Holy Father says something in defense of Cardinal Zen. We pray that, the bishops of America, everybody, but that we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of somewhat sad that it hasn't been forthcoming yet, but hopefully they come around or condemn it in harsher terms.
Yeah, we know the context of which has occurred in as far as the situation with the mainstream hierarchy and China and the Chinese church. So if anybody's unfamiliar with the situation, it's there's a mainline church in China which is basically under the boot of the communist government, basically in effect run by the communist government. And then there's an underground church of which Cardinal Zen was a part of, and whom constitute the true Catholics in that country. Mm-hmm. And I don't recall exactly how many years ago, but under Pope Francis's pontificate, there was a deal concordate with the Chinese government, the Chinese church, to in effect recognize the communist church, the above ground church, I guess, as it were.
I believe that was in 2018, if I remember.
That sounds about right. Something like that. So it wasn't exactly, remote in the past, but also not recent completely. So that's the backdrop under which this is all occurring. So we have to, we could hope. It's reasonable to hope for courage because the Holy Ghost still acts in the church. It acts through its prelates. If we believe the church is the church, we believe that these people are informed in a way by God. The Pope is the vicar of Christ. So insofar as that's the case, there's still some to be hopeful about. But we do hope that there will be more forthcoming than there has been to this point.
Yeah. One thing that strikes me through the whole thing, strikes me about Cardinal Zen in general, I should say, is how he seems to always have joy through all of it. I mean, not only through the oppression from the communists, which is to be expected of communists, but also through some of the lack of help that's been forthcoming from the church. It doesn't seem to faze him too much.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you see pictures of the man. I've been on Twitter tweeting out pictures of him saying mass and things of the sort. And his demeanor, like you said, is joyous. It's somewhat stoic, and just he acts with this knowledge that with a certainty that the faith is the faith, that Catholicism is true, and that because of that, no matter whether it's white martyrdom or red martyrdom that they present him with, you could see, or we obviously pray for him, pray for perseverance for for him, but you could see that the truth of the faith is so alive in him that he doesn't appear to be somebody that, regardless of how they could harm his body, that he knows that the only thing to worry about, especially at 90 years old, is the state of his soul. So he's a man with the truth in front of him.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of cliche to say, but he knows that the battle, in a sense, has already been won. You know what I mean? Whatever happens to him here on Earth, he knows what the true goal is. So.
Right, and you could see that this peace
Mm-hmm.
that he has, that the saints of the past have had. We think of a Saint Athanasius, Joan of Arc. These people have been in their time punished by what seemed, seemingly punished by the church itself. I might point to an Archbishop Lefebvre. These people that were on the receiving end of some harsh treatment by their superiors, and yet still knew that divine law was, and the divine word, and they knew what was true, and they kept that. It might have been Russell Kirk who said that there, for as a piece of practical advice, you're best to in hard times to just remember the things that are true, because they are true. And I think it's easy for us to, comfortable Westerners to get bogged down with being, anxious about the state of the church or the state of the world, and then forget that, Christ is risen from the dead. the very basics, these things that should make our lives, that no matter what's happening, and it's easier said than done. I mean, I could speak for myself that I haven't, we all go through troubles, but that's what sanctity is. It's remembering that what you're doing is the metaphysical undercurrent of the entire world.
Yeah, I mean, it's about restoring all things in Christ,
right?
Living your life that with Christ as King. So, what do you foresee or predict happening with Cardinal Zen? He's out on bail now. Do you think the Chinese, in a sense, have the balls to give him red martyrdom?
I was just having this conversation with my brother, actually. It's hard to, and I heard the commentator on EWTN say the same thing. Obviously it's hard to know. They already had the balls, as it were, to arrest him, which is a bold enough step as it is. Obviously, again, he's out on bail, so on and so forth, but you do wonder that how emboldened, because you could kind of take the Cardinal Zen situation as indicative of everything else that's going on in the world, that you want, because the Chinese government is Marxist, and who the enemy we're dealing with in the West is Marxist. They're the same. Western Marxism, Eastern Marxism, it's all Marxism. So I think we've been kind of in this weird situation, in especially since March of 2020. We've been in this weird, somewhat of a holding pattern of kind of asking ourselves that question: does the regime, in the West or in the East does the regime have it in them to really, really, really drop the hammer on not just Catholics, but most
Christians in general.
Christians in general, conservatives, right wingers.
Right.
Does the regime itself have the wherewithal and to proceed with? Frankly, you know what they want to proceed with. You know what they want.
Right. That's pretty clear at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know that it's pretty right. It's pretty obvious that, with all things being equal, they'd rather Cardinal Zen were dead. You know, the only thing that would keep the Chinese government from killing him is optics, I guess.
Yeah.
Though it doesn't seem that the optics would be so bad right now. So it's hard to, I mean, in general, just because of the silence. But it is hard to say. He seems ready either way.
Do you think the Catholic history with communist regimes, Eastern Europe and such, do you think that gives them any pause at all? I mean, it could be argued that Catholicism is one of the major reasons for the downfall of the Iron Curtain, at least in some facets.
It should give him. Now, that gets into a deeper question of history, right? Because it's like, well, you see a lot about how the Reagan and so the dual pontificate of John Paul and presidency of Ronald Reagan. Yeah. You hear a lot about how these two figures were responsible for the collapse of, like you said, the Iron Curtain, and kind of what people like casually say the fall of communism. You wonder though, because what we are dealing with is, like we just said, I mean, Marxism in China, and a lot of what the trouble that we have today as Americans is Marxist in origin. I mean, obviously at the front of everybody's mind is Roe v. Wade.
Yep. And
we know that the first country to sanction abortion legally was the Soviet Union. Yep. So people talk about, so I'm always a little confused, because I'm like, well, people talk about how communism was, crushed by John Paul and Ronald Reagan. I'm just like, well, when? Because and
it didn't disappear, that's for sure.
No, it looks like it just went elsewhere. It scattered.
Yeah.
You could look at the situation. I recommend this guy's work all the time. Darryl Cooper, Martyr Made. He does a lot of good analysis of the situation in Russia and Ukraine, which we're also dealing with. We're dealing with a lot at once these days.
It's coming from every direction.
And everything is weaving together. You have Cardinal Zen, gas prices, Roe v. Wade, Russia, Ukraine. So it's interesting because the fall of the Soviet Union led to basically Russia being pillaged, and just their resources and their money being
they just became a shell.
Correct. And so what happens then is you have a guy like Vladimir Putin come into power, and is kind of as far as by Russian standards, kind of a moderate,
yep,
a moderate populist, and stokes, the Russian feeling, the love of the motherland and Mother Russia, and that works. And then, as this is all going on, as this is all playing out, you see this Leviathan of NATO expanding, and globalism and Marxism just starting to rear its ugly head, but in the form of the West.
I mean, it seems like every problem that we're dealing with from all sides traces its its way back to liberalism in some sense, whether it's modern Marxism like we see in China, or like we're starting to see here in the West, or if it's the liberal NATO mindset, or even like you said, Putin is a moderate. He's not really a conservative or a traditionalist. He's playing the liberal game like everyone else.
Sure is, yeah.
So it's
yeah. No, it's right, and I think right wingers are probably wrong to engage in one of the practices that we are competing with the rundown today, aren't we?
The Friday night shows. We should rethink that, honestly.
That's okay. But I always forget about that. That's funny. But it's very apropos of the right wing to kind of engage in hero worship, because they'll get excited over Putin and think that he's this conservative champion, and
or Elon Musk
or Donald Trump or any and
just a lot of savior complexes.
Correct, and it's I always tell people that it's understandable, but one has to be careful, because the left is very good about not doing this and staying on message, and they don't really, unlike the right, the left does not allow for heresy.
Well, I think it comes down to the left has a goal. They have a goal in mind, whereas the right doesn't. What's the right's goal? To slow down the left? That's what it seems to be at this point.
Yeah, the right is so the left is of the mindset that even the opinion of the right wing shouldn't be allowed, and that's why. And I'm no fan of Elon Musk. I've went on and on and on and on Twitter about how I don't like the guy and how I think he's not a friend to the movement in any way. But all the same, it's true that the left believes that even allowing the dissenting voice at all per se is an issue. Mm-hmm. Whereas the right wing, like you throw them a bone at all, and they're content, and they it's like, the analogy would be like a football game or something like that. The other team is up by like 5 or 6 touchdowns, and you just scored 1 touchdown. You're nowhere near even close to where the other team is, and you start dancing around and acting like a fool in the end zone, like you did anything. That's what the right behaves like, because they don't know what it's like to win at all, because we've just been taking L after L for years.
How do you think the collective right will react if Roe v. Wade is overturned, which could happen Monday, actually?
Yeah, as soon as Monday, it seems, right? Well, okay, so if Roe v. Wade is overturned, it's I guess would be I'd consider it a major victory.
Definitely.
For sure, 100%. I think there's a good portion of the right that knows that that there's still a lot of work to be done, because we'd still be in a situation where, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that pretty much any conservative who's aware, or liberal that's aware, knows that in my state of New York, abortion will stay legal.
Nothing's going to change there. Yeah.
No, I don't know about Minnesota, but
most likely not.
Yeah. But the deep red states, abortion will go, most likely. Mm-hmm. But we still live in a country then where child murder is legal in certain states and will probably be more egregious than it would have been in certain states,
Yeah.
and completely illegal in other states. So our mind should quickly then dart to 1860.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's a good analogy.
and national divorce, and
I mean, it's just a new Mason-Dixon line.
it 100% is, and it's spread out over the country somewhat, but there's no any union that exists is nominal anyway.
Yep.
Even now. But then you have to ask yourself, because, well, the South said in the in 1860 that we're splitting, we're out, and Lincoln, for whatever reason, had was bent on preserving a union
At all costs.
at all costs, even if there was no union. Something about the mega country of the United States was necessary to him, and he needed it to exist. So, but slavery not being the issue that was fought over, it was one issue among many. But Lincoln was on record saying that to pursue, I'd keep slavery to preserve the Union. So
came down to money, like everything.
Yeah,
money
of
and
course.
power.
The North was mid-industrialization. The South was, wanting to maintain its agrarian culture, which which is theoretically the traditional understanding of what America was supposed to be like. So America then fissured and fought a bloody civil war over that. Now we have the country split over child murder, and you wonder exactly how if those issues, which are comparatively minor, led to that, what exactly this is going to lead to. On top of the fact that
shit. What's going on here?
What are you doing?
What is going on here? Listen, this is my my cry for help in case I have my wife is driving.
No.
Sleeping.
This is my suicide note. If something happens, what are you guys doing? Oh, shush, get off of 50. I don't know. I'm killing her right now.
Are we going to watch you have a car accident on live TV?
Should get us news.
Dude, we just had the craziest day in Sedona. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Tell us.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
The video's cutting up, but we can hear you pretty good.
All right, I'll check back in later. This is terrible. All right, guys, have fun.
Thanks, Anthony.
How did I know you would show up?
He has to. This is his baby.
yeah, it is.
But,
Anthony was on for a while.
That's funny.
Where were we?
Somewhere around Abraham Lincoln.
I think you were saying if the Civil War was fought over, slavery, what is going to happen over abortion?
Over child murder, which is as far as sins go. I mean, there's no debate. It's of course it's far worse.
It's inherently evil as opposed to being slavery.
Yeah,
is a little different.
Right.
To say
right. Yeah, I mean, the American institution of slavery and the way it was done,
evil,
horrific.
Definitely. Yeah,
right.
Terrible.
But right. So, at any rate,
do you think if Roe v. Wade is overturned and it goes back to the states, right, which is what seems to be likely at this point, do you think the left is going to leave it be at that? I mean, I know your answer, but
yeah, it's hard to imagine a scenario in where they would coexist, or we should be of the same mindset.
Right, I agree. We shouldn't allow it to coexist.
Yeah. So they, it's almost, tactically, the left's position makes a lot of sense. You could understand what it's like. No, I have no communion. I have no union with you. You could understand why they would think that way. But the right, for at least for a long time, has always been bent on more or less been bent on libertarianism and letting the left do what the left does, and so on and so forth. But it's there's a point at which, you know, it's kind of like a powder keg, and I guess what you have to wonder is whether or not the right will be, you know, will have the gumption to, yeah, right, yeah, exactly, to
Good word choice.
You know, to basically adopt the attitude of the left and just refuse.
Yeah, because I'm worried we'll do, or am I mean the right in general, even though I don't really consider myself a part of it, but I'm worried that the right will take the win and go home, in a sense. You know what I mean? They'll go home to the red states, and that will be the end of the fight in their mind.
Yeah, and you could kind of see that when the initial news broke about Roe, you see unrestrained joy, and you know, and you're just like, man, do you not realize what's happening right in front of you?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I guess, for the most part, that they don't. But between that, and I mean, it's odd because that, you know, all that happens right in the same week, a week or two, as they send $40 million over to Ukraine, and there's no baby formula, and there's no, you know, we forgot, you know, that's just dawning on me again too. So the revolution that they're attempting is not stopping at just Roe v. Wade.
No, it's everything.
Yeah, it did. And you wonder, and then you have, I forgot who said it. It might have been Eric Sammons, that whenever you have bipartisanship, bipartisan agreement over something, you know that it's horrible.
Yeah.
You know that what they're agreeing upon is some kind of atrocity, and you had that more or less with Ukraine, and the only one who wouldn't go along with it was
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, who's an interesting character who also didn't get the jab, so he's done a fair amount of good, and sometimes he seems like he's kind of like a renegade. We could use a bit more of that.
Do you think all of this, you know, the formula shortage, the probable other shortages coming up, do you think it's all truly intentional and like by design, or do you think the system is really just finally starting to collapse under its own weight? You know, in the way the Soviet Union did.
It's a good question. I was listening to Matt Walsh today, as I want to do. He was, well, we know a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of cargo ships are held up out there.
Especially outside of China, Shanghai. Yeah.
Right. We also know that, and I tweeted this today, that, oh, Steve, yeah, I'd actually would like to talk about that. That's interesting. Booker T. Washington. But yeah, we see the situation with the baby formula. So Matt Walsh was explaining that the European companies, which make baby formula, could have been under a kind of emergency approval for. And what does their emergency approval remind you of, by the way? To have been, so the the ban on importing these things could have easily been lifted, and all of a sudden you wouldn't have a baby formula problem anymore like you do now. But they forgoed that option, and so it might be a both and in some respects, because it's like, well, okay, so there's obviously a sense in which these demons will foist hard living on their population, but there's also, I'm sure there's also a sense in which they're woefully inadequate and kind of, well, now I wonder, because we could know this, is that if there are food shortages, and I think of what Dr. David Allan White, who's a Catholic, was a former Catholic, not a former Catholic, Catholic. He used to be a professor at the Naval Academy. He said you're going to need a wheelbarrow full of cash to go buy a carton of milk, and if that happens, you can rest assured that they'll have plenty. They'll have plenty of milk. They'll have plenty of everything they need.
Right.
So it's like Animal Farm,
I mean, I don't know. I guess I have a hard time looking at these people and seeing great intelligence and foresight. But at the same time, we're not just fighting against them. We're fighting against, powers and principalities. And
right.
I think we have to remember that there's more behind this than just other people.
Yeah.
The angels, the demons.
Yeah. St. Paul says it. And so it would seem to be that, somebody like Biden or somebody like Harris, they're not competent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're also not in charge.
Sure.
And that's the kicker, So Biden, left to his own devices. I mean, I just listened to him today was talking about the seemingly impending food shortages. And he's like, oh, Trump wanted you, he would have had you, or not would have had you. Oh, well, you'd be standing in line for a box of food. And I'm just like, A, what the hell is a box of food? And B, like, and I'm just like, I don't talk about Biden that much usually, because it's just like, I mean, it's cliche at this point to dunk on Biden because he's absolutely gone mad. But it's amazing that they are legitimately, wheeling this guy out almost literally to, pretend he's the ruler of the free world. And then
it does seem like they like they're shoving it down our throat, right? Like they give us Biden, who probably can't find the bathroom in time, right, and Harris, who was the least popular among the Democratic candidates. It's like they show us we're in charge and we'll give you whoever we want.
Yeah, and it's no wonder that she was the least popular, because she has like the most unpalatable personality like in history. So I so we could, so from that stand, I was thinking of this stupid scene from The Dark Knight Rises, where I think it was Selena Kyle who says to Bruce Wayne, you're gonna wonder how you live so large and left so little, for the rest of us. And that's what it seems like to me. Something like I don't know if you're much of a reader of short stories, but Edgar Allan Poe's Mask of the Red Death is is one of the things that I'm continuously reminded of as all of this plays out. Just these elite satanic people, and I mean, look, eventually it's going to catch up to them. But partying, and you see them without masks, that they're stupid things, and while well, Americans are just, are suffering immensely. And it always reminded me of that story. And one of the things that I don't know gets enough attention is that, and it seems to, it's like reminiscent of, the 70s and Jimmy Carter's speech over the radio, where he, Americans are starting to be concerned that the lives of their children are not going to be,
better than their own, and
right.
in the midst of the gas lines and the gas shortages back then and all of that.
Right. And that's breathing down our neck. And worse yet, we're the millennial generation are the first generation now who are going to have a lower standard of living than their parents in American history. So the right, neoconservatives often make fun of, I guess, people my age or whomever for not wanting to, for being for debt forgiveness and things of this sort. And I think it's entirely inappropriate, because what was foisted on these, that, my generation and sometimes generations younger, was so unjust that it's almost, it makes sense that whether it's reasonable or not from a financial standpoint for that to work, who knows? It almost is superfluous to me. But the principle of the thing, it's like, what the hell else are they supposed to ask for?
I mean, nothing else done financially since the Great Depression has been a great idea either. So
no, it's all been terrible.
Yeah.
So
I mean, money's just made up at this point. Why?
Yeah, it's fiat currency.
Money.
It's backed by nothing. So I mean, hell, I mean, how, they can't default on the damn loans. So it might be, at least understanding and not dunking on them. Oh, to those millennials, you know what I mean? It's like, no, it's a legitimate gripe, because people aren't fathoming the cultural significance of the fact that what is supposed to be the American dream, which did kind of work for a while, the American dream just ended. Like, it stopped. The American dream was always that your son and your daughter were going to have a better life than your parents, and so on and so forth. And
now it's literally that you won't own anything and you'll be happy.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Like, that's what America was supposed to be like. And the country as you know it came to a screeching halt. And that there's inferno and outrages and mostly peaceful protests and and things like that. It's, who would be shocked? We're so used to all this that. And the one bill that I forgot what state that was just going through, where there were questioning the gal, and it was just, does your bill have any provision in it for, and this is back to the abortion question, for babies up to the moment of birth? Not to say that that's any different than any other abortion. It is the same,
right? But
it is in its way a bit more graphic. And she said no. Well, how do it, like, and that, but then you or I wake up, guiltlessly. It's not really our fault, but you, I, or the next guy wakes up and then does what he has to do the next day. It seems like some kind of cruel joke that there should be any kind of proceeding as normal when somebody who's in charge said that.
how do you go on as normal? How do you live in that society with people like that?
You don't. It's psychosis. So it's what we're seeing is this in everything else, in the abortion question, but in all the other facets of life now. this horrible sin of abortion
Mhm.
is really starting to bleed into the rest of everyday life. And it's terrible. It's going to cause a lot of suffering. It does cause a lot of suffering, but one could hope that the honesty of the circumstances could at least cause some people to wake up.
Mhm.
That's why I've been focusing so much on Malcolm X, because he's somebody who understood separation, and that's separation or dissolution are going to be the only two answers going forward.
Yeah, when you disagree on something as intrinsically essential, to everything, as the right to life, when I don't know how there can be agreement on anything if there's no agreement on that.
Right. And back to the original question of Cardinal Zen, it's like they literally just arrested like your holiest cardinal, one of your holiest church members, and it this would have been major mainstream news at one point or another.
Oh yeah.
Now it's relegated to our circles.
Yeah, you don't hear it in secular media at all. They don't care.
The highest ranking prelate in China. Now, it's my understanding that I haven't read the statement but the Diocese of Beijing, I think it was, apparently took an okay stance. I would like to see if I could pull it up. Let's see. But the commentator on EWTN anticipates that the diocese is going to withdraw, kind of retreat from the question because of the power of the regime. We have no way of knowing that, but you sure hope not.
What I guess, how can we use the example of someone like Cardinal Zen, or Bishop Schneider, or even past heroes like who's the Eastern European who's in the process of being sainted? Is that Cardinal Zen or something like that? How do we use?
I know a little bit.
How do we use these church leaders, to help us get through times like we're going through? Because it feels like we're going to be, in situations similar to, to Catholics in China or Catholics in the Soviet Union here pretty shortly.
Well, in the sense that they're living saints, and then we have actual past saints. The answer is, imitation, I suppose, and obviously it's a different Asian country, but you could look to something like the persecuted church in Japan at their time, and these people went decades without a priest showing up, but they would do underground prayer services for themselves, and a priest would show up, and generations would have gone by of the faith just being handed down word of mouth and practiced that way, and a priest would show up startled at the fidelity of the faith of the underground Japanese people, who oftentimes were martyred in absolutely brutal fashion for believing what it is for having the true faith, but they did. And now another thing not to do is to despair over how the church is going to respond to it. Is Pope Francis going to do the right thing by Cardinal Zen? Like, probably not. I
wouldn't expect it.
I hope he does, and hoping is okay, even if it's hope against hope. But it's not in line with what he's done in the past. So, but what people have to understand is that it really doesn't matter. And because you could pray for him, and his reward in heaven, because he is an old man anyway. If they kill him, or if he dies in jail, his reward will be all the better in heaven because of it. And the church is not. There's a good line in a song by Sturgill Simpson, whom I like. It's "Don't call it a sign of the times, because it's always been this way." And because and I'm thinking about. I heard a great sermon on the church in Japan, and I learned a lot about it. And the Jesuits in the Middle Ages were this close to converting the Japanese and their government. This close.
Yep.
The Dominicans got upset about it. They thought the Jesuits weren't doing it the right way. The Jesuits got pulled out, and the emperor never converts. Japan was on the brink of being a Catholic nation, and they're left for dead by the church in the Middle Ages. This is the Middle Ages, not now.
Right.
So even then, people were failing. It's what people do. It's what members of the hierarchy do sometimes. It's whether it's malice or not, which who knows. But God is not mocked. God doesn't lose because his people failed him. Of course not.
I mean, God, by his very nature, can only bring about the most good possible in the world. It's what and who God is. So
right.
So whatever happens, will it be what brings out the most good?
Right. So it will only be that way. And if it starts hitting the fan here in the United States or in Europe, just look to Cardinal Zen, imitate what he's doing now, and pray for him, and think to yourself that you have to be, insofar as it's your state in life and insofar as you're capable, you have to be so faithful to the point of being jailed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's possible. It's possible that would happen, but the more amazing thing is that it's not only it's possible that you would go to jail for it, but it's also possible that God will provide even in the worst circumstances. That's not possible. That's a certainty.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how many saints do we hear about that went to martyrdom with
sure
little to no pain and the greatest consolation possible?
Yeah, Saint Maximilian, Father, he's not alive anymore, but Father Chizek, I think the Jesuit.
Oh yeah.
Saint Isaac Jogues, the North American martyrs who were skinned by the Native Americans. There's any number, that the church has a wealth of history to draw from. And for perseverance, one of the now it's not Catholic per se, but one of the but the message certainly is, I think, at the end, one of the books that I like to recommend to people is, have you ever read Cormac McCarthy's The Road?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I would recommend anybody to get their hands on that. And I think it's a brutal story, but the ending is just absolutely amazing. And it's about a post-apocalyptic society.
Did they make a movie with
Viggo? Yeah.
Okay.
From what
I've seen the movie.
I've read the book, but I haven't seen the movie because I love the book so much that I wouldn't watch it. So
yeah, fair enough.
But I'm just like, I can't have I have the story in my head. I'm like, I don't want anything. I don't want anything impeding on that. And again, yeah, and it's about the father. You saw the movie, so it's about the father and the son, and in the book, McCarthy just has this line, in this desolate, horrible wasteland, and he just looks to his son and thinks to himself, if he is not the word of God, then God hath not spoken. And that's your children, and it's right. Like, so the answer is really that it's right. It's all right there for you. Hope is, well, my favorite historian and podcaster, you could find him easily, is Charles Coulomb.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love Charles. And he, I remember he said an old saying, God is always closer than the door." So that is that's a good saying. That's a good saying that things that are a little dicey that I like to remember. So
His pithy one-liners are just
oh gosh,
they're
he's
just perfect.
fantastic. I met him last summer, and he did a book signing in New York City, and it was a day or two before they lifted this mandate, thank God. But the day or two before they did the mandate and the citywide mandate for the vaccine,
Mhm.
and it was somewhat surreal walking around the city, and it's very much had this wasteland type of feel to it. But it was still one of these things to me that was just like, well, all hope is not lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are coming up on an hour, so
Yeah, we sure are, aren't we?
yeah, that went by fast.
Yeah.
Any I guess whether it's on Cardinal Zen, Roe v. Wade, formula shortage, Ukraine. I mean, any of the crazy stuff going on. Any last thoughts or anything?
Don't despair, obviously. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, you see all these things, and it's almost cliche to tell people not to despair at this point, but don't. We all fall short of God's expectation of us. I do. Everybody does. Never beat yourself up. Always remember what St. John Chrysostom said. He said, forgiveness has risen from the dead. So every time you fall or anything, you just keep going and just keep the faith, because I was just listening to Jordan Peterson talk, who's a mixed bag, but he has his moments. He was just talking at the Franciscan University of Steubenville. He's talking about the Jews in the desert in Exodus. And well, it might seem at times, I kind of think of Steve Skojak when I say this, but at times it might seem that you want to ask God why or something like that, or question what it is you believe about everything. But you then have to ask yourself if you abandon all this in the desert, if you're in the desert and you abandon your faith, is it not worse? Is it not adding to your sorrow and your suffering that you just lost your faith?
You're still in the desert.
You're still in the desert. Now you're in the desert without faith.
Yeah.
So keep it, hold on to it. Don't let the single thing come between you and that, because it's life is short and eternity is long. So
yeah, one of the quotes I think about a lot, thinking about these sorts of subjects, it's kind of a quote that's been misremembered, but it's Tertullian's the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Not exactly what he said, but and he was kind of a mixed bag too, getting involved with the Donatists and such. But regardless,
it happens.
He's right. Anytime the church has gone through a period of persecution, of suffering, it's been what brings it back. Whether you're talking about the Roman persecutions or any number of times throughout history, the French Revolution, led to St. John Vianney, and
right.
So whatever ends up happening, it's only going to help in the end.
Yeah, praise God for it. Yeah,
yeah. Well, the Jesuit motto, ad majorem Dei gloriam, all for the greater glory of God. I think that's what we have to keep in mind.
That's it.
Anthony wants to know if we miss him.
I don't know. We just had an interesting conversation, Anthony.
I did not hear about any relatives cousins.
I mentioned my brother once, but that was
Oh, true, you did mention your brother.
my brother.
We didn't have
I am
him licking
I
his
am a
fake teeth.
I'm a New Yorker, but
Is that just natural?
family's bound to come up. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I don't have anything else if you don't.
No, that's about all I got.
Well, for anyone watching this live or later on, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share if you can. Same goes whether it's on YouTube or Rumble. We are also going to be posting this on all the major podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, what other ones? Amazon, iHeartRadio, all of those. So it should be up on there in the next few days as well. So share this however you'd like, and whatever ends up happening in the future, I guess, stay strong in your faith. And as Padre Pio said, pray, hope, and don't worry.
God is merciful and will hear your prayer.
Yep, exactly. So God bless everyone, and good night.